Debbie, I was looking through the slides. I know we're going to get started in just a minute, but it looks like, 2 weeks ago, just to remind the group, everybody that's coming in, we talked a lot about the NAR settlement and some things that we should say and shouldn't say. Really excited about today. And there's quite a few slides that are going to help the people that are attending today, all of our real estate agents and friends, with some of those scripts as well. So I'm glad we're getting into a little bit of that today.
Sure. And by the way, we can be very organic with our sessions together. So if you ever think of a topic and you think, wow, I wish that Sean and Debbie would talk about this some Friday, just message Sean, let him know. If, maybe Sean, what we should even do at some point is we'll do a stump the coach, like the toughest objection handled. Those are kind of fun sometimes.
Those are my favorite. Absolutely.
Definitely do that.
All right, we're at bottom of the hour. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone who's here. We appreciate you joining us every second and fourth Friday, if I have that right, Debbie.
I think
so. Appreciate you joining us. We love having Debbie De Grote, founder of Forward Coaching. They do just an incredible job with all of the real estate agents they work with. And Debbie, we know you're so you got a busy schedule. And you do a lot, and we really appreciate you joining us twice a month to help all of our friends here at Landvoice as well.
Absolutely. Love to be here. All right. Well, let's fire it up. So today we're going to spend a minute on scripts and skills. And, here at Forward, we coach a lot of veteran agents. And yet I think that the truly stellar producers never stop working on their scripts, their communication ability, working on their skills. Sean, I've been spending all week in my spare time working on a negotiation course because I think we, as great salespeople, we can never think that we have arrived, right? If we're not getting 100% of every buyer and seller we work with, obviously there's room to grow. So we'll spend a little time talking about some scripts and skills today. I think the reason it's so important, Sean, is with the changes that are coming ahead of us, it's really a good time to say, where do I need to skill up and improve so that I can really stand out as that clear choice, that wise advisor, and I can prove and defend my value. So that's why it's so important.
You just nailed it. And what we say, our words matter, and those things are changing, right? What we said last year is a little bit different than what we're going to be saying to you today. And that's what I love about our topic today.
So again, you all know, I think by now.
You want to take a second on here, Debbie, or you want to keep going?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, they know I started at the age of 18. And I remember my broker said to me, you're young and stupid. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're going to learn these scripts, and you're going to practice them over and over and over. And I think the beauty of it is when you practice what you're going to say. In fact, I read a book on communication that said the worst time to think of what you're going to say is when you are saying it. So when you master communication, the messaging, and how you define your value and service in a sexy way, and you can explain the options that the buyers and sellers have. See, it sounds organic, even though it's scripted, because you practiced, so you internalized it. It sounds organic, but it also then allows you to not worry so much about what you're going to say, but really be present in that moment with that customer, listening to them, asking great questions, because you're really confident. And we've all gotten pretty good at most of the things. It's just with the new scripting ahead, that's where we're going to want to spend some time in the next couple months, really practicing for that. So if you're not worried about what you're going to say, then you can focus 100% on your prospects' needs and wants and motivation. And sometimes people will say to me, well, I just like to be organic. I just want to show up and I just want to have a conversation. And absolutely, we don't want to sound like a scripted, hardcore telemarketer. That would be so repelling. In fact, I really don't like it when agents will call a listing presentation or a buyer consultation a pitch, because no one likes to be pitched at. But even though you think you're organic, you probably have a script. It's kind of the things you usually say in that particular situation. It might not be the very best things that you could say. So when we think about scripts, I also want to backtrack for a moment and think about rapport. If you do not have rapport with the person you're speaking with, it really won't matter how great your script is, because without rapport, persuasion is not very likely to occur. So we have to work on some other things as well, and they're really very easy. Mirror and matching their rate of speech. A fast talker thinks a slow talker is annoying, and a slow talker thinks a fast talker is maybe a little slick and slimy. And, it's funny when we talk about expired, Sean, I was expired queen. I loved calling expireds. And I discovered that when I would leave a message for an expired, first of all, I just left a very short message. Hi, this is Debbie. I'm a real estate agent. I just have a really quick question about your property. If you could give me a call back, I'd appreciate it. So I would leave that message because it wasn't super clear. What did I want? Do I have a buyer? Do I have an offer? Like, they don't know. So they may call me back, which sometimes they did. But then I discovered if I would mirror and match them. So for an example, if someone on their voicemail said, hello, this is Mary. I'm not home. Please leave a message. Hello, Mary. This is Debbie De Grote. The reason I'm calling, I just have a question about the house. Could you call me right back? My rate of callback increased dramatically. Why? Because when someone speaks and sounds like us, our subconscious mind identifies them as not the enemy, as a friend. It's kind of a weird little thing. And it works. So mirror and match their rate of speech and speech pattern. Ask great questions. And in fact, there's an awesome book, The 7 Powers of Questions by Dorothy Leeds. And in that book, Dorothy gives, I think, a really simple piece of advice. She says, for any situation, conversation, meeting, write down 3 to 5 powerful questions that you want to ask. And Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference guy, the hostage negotiator, he says, ask your toughest ones first. So put them in order of importance. Think about those 3 to 5 questions. So Sean, it might be following up on a prospect to say, are they ready to list? It might be talking to a seller about a price reduction or negotiating a request for repairs with a buyer. But I need to think about, what am I going to say and what are the questions I need to ask? Now, then, of course, part of building rapport is sharing helpful and valuable information, showing genuine and sincere interest. And, none of us want to be a pushy salesperson. But, your energy and your enthusiasm can allow you to go a little further. If I said, Sean, I'm so excited to be talking to you today. I love the area that you want to start your home search in, and here's why it's so terrific. And you know what, Sean, I've so enjoyed my conversation with you. I would love to help you. Can you get together with me today? Because this is a terrific property. It is not going to last. See, it's like energy, enthusiasm. And there's a weird thing that is kind of a proven persuasion fact, that when people like you, they're more likely to be persuaded, and they will like you better when they think you like them. So if I meet someone at open house and we've had a conversation and they're on their way out the door and I say, you know what, Sean, I really like you. You're a cool guy. I've enjoyed talking to you. I would love to help you. So You know, all of that is part of that rapport, the genuine and sincere interest, and then acknowledging and approving. For years, I kept this little cheat sheet on my phone that said, great, terrific, excellent, really, interesting, good for you. You're kidding. Ouch. And that was I called it my response pattern. So here's why I did that. We all have a favorite word. Mine happens to be great. So if I'm not careful, as I'm trying to give acknowledgement and approval to the things that Sean is saying, I might say, oh, that's great. Yeah, great. Oh, totally great. And it doesn't sound real. But if I can mix that up and say, you know what, Sean, you're right. Really? Oh, absolutely. No, that's perfect. See, if I'm sprinkling in that response pattern, I'm giving him lots of approval. I'm mixing it up so it seems real. And it's going to feel a little weird to you at first, because if you're not used to giving that acknowledgement and approval, you're going to feel like this is too much. But you know what? It's not too much, because everyone seeks that approval and acceptance. So make sure as you're asking your great questions, we don't want it to sound like an interrogation. So you can soften it with, I'm curious. I was wondering, may I ask? And always being careful to come from a tone of curiosity, not judgment. Then you give that acknowledgement and approval, and you use your awesome questions to get past what I call that reflex no. Right? So Sean, as an example, if I were calling expireds and they answer the phone and they say, I don't have time to talk. I got to go. I got to pick my kid up from school. Absolutely. I understand. And I will make it very quick. May I ask one question? Yeah, sure. What do you think stopped your home from selling? Because I'm looking at the MLS. It looks gorgeous. Well, yeah, I know. No kidding, right? I mean, we put all this money into it. Really? What happened? Did you have any offers? No, we didn't have any offers. What do you think went wrong? And now where's his kid? He forgot all about his kid, right? Because that was just a reflex no to get me off the phone. But if I can ask one question and then they answer and I can ask one more, and then they answer and I can ask one more, pretty soon I've broken into that conversation, right?
Debbie, this is so good. It's one of my favorite things. There's a lot of different trends that benefited from you. One of them is this staying within rapport, having the emotional intelligence to connect to human beings and to
Right.
people. This is really the secret, isn't it?
It really is. So, you know, when we're thinking about our dialogue and our conversations, we're going to need to really lean into that role of the wise advisor to offer solutions, to be able to talk to them about the appropriate loan programs that will allow additional seller concessions that could be used to pay the commission to the buyer agent. Like, we're going to have a whole new wealth of knowledge. But you know, it's all the stuff that we should already be doing, right? Knowing the market trends, the market data, being able to offer options to them. And you know, I'm just a big fan of having a really core group of affiliates and vendor partners that provide the quality services I need, like Landvoice for all my data, and then a great lender that I trust, that I know will do the job for them. And I have no problem recommending that they meet with these quality vendors. Now, they may choose not to use them, but I want to control that as much as I can to get a good result. So as we move into this new way of selling, we got to be prepared for what they may ask. And Sean, I have a new batch of scripts. I'm not sure if Jessica sent those to you for you to post, or we posted them maybe last time for the buyers
2
and
weeks ago.
sellers. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you didn't see them, they can find them on your website, right?
Yeah, that's right. Or email support@landvoice.com and we can get those to you guys.
Yeah. And so I'll give you an example. If so it was very hard to write these scripts, by the way, guys. Took me a whole weekend. And the reason you're going to go, really? They're not that complicated. But the reason was this is not final yet, right? There are the things we know that are likely to be finalized in mid-July when it settles, or a little bit after that, because it could run over. But right now, you're getting questions by buyers and sellers. So we have to be able to answer those questions. So for an example, in the scripting, so Sean, if you said to me, well, Debbie, I want to list my house with you, but do I have to pay the buyer agent a commission? Because I've heard the law has changed, right? See, they're not paying attention. They don't know it hasn't changed, or it's July. And some of them don't even bring it up at all. But let's say Sean brought it up and said, so I hear I don't have to pay the buyer agent anymore. Well, actually, Sean, you have a lot of choices. Commission is negotiable by law. As your listing agent, I work for a commission of X. And then you and I decide, in order to sell the home for the highest price possible, does it make sense to offer a buyer agent commission? And if so, what amount? And currently, we can still do that. Now, when the rules change, it will move out of the cooperative field in the MLS into the public remarks, and we can label it buyer concession so they can use that to pay their agent. But I don't want to do it. You know what? And you don't have to. Here's something we should be aware of. 86% of buyers purchased with an agent. Now, they're going to know, if you're not offering to pay their agent, that they're going to have to pay out of their pocket. Unfortunately, most buyers will not have those additional funds. So they may choose to pass on looking at your property. So what seems like a strategy to save money may actually minimize the amount of offers and opportunities that we have. See, we want to be able to not be angry. Oops, sorry, guys. I thought I turned it off and I must have accidentally turned it on. We want to not be angry when they bring these questions up, because they have a right to ask, right? And if you think about it from a buyer perspective, are they going to be willing to pay you? We had some data that Ben shared with me that it was something like 48% of buyers this past year had signed a buyer broker agreement. And in most of those, they had discussed in some fashion commission. So other professional industries, they have to pay to work with an attorney, a CPA, and they do it so they can be protected. So they're not opposed to signing agreements. It's already happening. Some states have had it as a law for a long time, and they're not opposed to finding a way to pay the commission or put that into the negotiation. We just can't have fear around asking them. So there's those stats, and I'm going to move this Q&A box out of my way because it's blocking me so I can't see them. There we go. So 48% of buyers in 2023 said the commission was paid by the seller. 14% was shared by buyer and seller. 28% was paid by buyers only. So you see, they're already 40% already doing it, already participating in some fashion. And when it becomes law and it is now something that has to be done a certain way, it's going to become more normal, right?
It is. Yep.
So do we have some work to do? Yes. But we're not starting at zero. And we're not facing this overarching industry change. We may just need to change how we do it, how we approach it. Some of the states where it's not required yet to have that buyer broker agreement and have that commission in there, the agents are already starting to take action on that, because they said, this gives me a runway of moving towards this negotiable commission conversation. It gives me a chance to practice while most sellers are still offering to pay, right? So I think it's a good time to get ramped up. And 90% of sellers surveyed in the last year said they were glad that they hired an agent, that they would do it again, and they felt their agent provided service worth the compensation paid. So they see your value, right? So here's a little script that I borrowed from Ben. We review data as a professional. I review data annually. And it proves that buyers and sellers tell us exactly where, sorry, I can't read it, the stupid little box here, let me move it. Okay, we review the data annually, which profiles buyers and sellers and tells us exactly where buyers found their properties. And then, Sean, we adapt our strategies to sell homes to match those search patterns. 86% of buyers bought a home with an agent, and 28% bought what their agent actually found and put them into and recommended. So you see, if you're unwilling to offer some compensation or concession that allows that buyer agent to pay their agent, then that may eliminate 86% of our market, right? So how we discuss it in a sexy way, and always thinking about anything we say to a buyer or a seller, in their mind, subconsciously, as we say it, they're thinking, so what? In other words, so what does this mean to me? And that's why we always have to answer that. Here's the statement, but what is the benefit, or what could be the harm to them if they don't think that through clearly, right? So that's
Debbie,
that wise advisor.
We're getting a couple of people asking questions about that buyer's commission, what happens. We've got a couple of other scripts here in the slides that we'll get to that answer
Okay,
those, right?
perfect. Yeah, and then we'll try to save a couple minutes at the end too. And 50% who searched online and found their own property still called their agent to show them the property. So this tells us almost all buyers choose to work with an agent. That's why offering buyer agent compensation or concession is a tool to attract more exposure. And in fact, it's a marketing tool. And guys, what I say to them that's in my other scripts is, here's the good news. The good news is, Mr. Seller, you're not writing anyone a check today. Anything around compensation or concessions, it's just marketing carrots and tools to incentivize the agents to work overtime, to attract the ideal buyer to your home, and then the negotiations begin. And as the seller, you have control. So if you're not satisfied with the way that offer is written, you're simply not going to accept it. And that will be my job, to negotiate on your behalf. And no one gets paid a penny until the transaction actually closes. So just remember, what we choose to do today is really to open up that exposure. And always I have separated the two commissions, and now I think it's going to be critical to do that. But I've always done it, because you see, when I would get 6%, and the seller thought that sounded like a lot, or I would put 6% in the listing, they thought that sounded like a lot, but I would say, Mr. Seller, I only charge 3% to represent you in your sale. And then I would suggest we pay the buyer agent 3%. So the only thing you need to decide is, what are you willing to offer the agent to attract additional buyers? And guys, I get it. In some of your markets, it's 7. There are some agents charging 7, and some it's 5. I talked to someone in Canada yesterday. He said, I'm struggling to get more than 2 and 2. But one thing I'd ask of all of you, I know it's not easy, and sometimes you're going to negotiate beneath where you'd like to be. All I'd ask of all of you is don't walk in, whether it's a buyer or a seller, don't volunteer to cut. So tell them what you're worth, tell them what you're willing to work for, and if they negotiate, do your best, stand your ground, make a good business decision if you choose to take a cut, but please don't volunteer, okay? And so sure, they may say, can I offer 0? But I think when you look at the scripts, you can have plenty of ammunition to talk them through that in a very logical way. So remember, yes, you can. However, it doesn't mean that if we get an offer from a buyer, they may ask the seller to credit the buyer with X amount. They may ask the seller to credit the buyer for concessions. So if you say no, that doesn't mean we might not still get an offer requesting it. Just because I want to prepare them, right? I want that seller to understand. And, this is where it's a little cloudy right now, guys. So we won't have a whole what if conversation today. It'll be clear eventually. What's a little cloudy is, will it be able to say in the public remarks that the seller is willing to pay the buyer agent? Will it be possible in the public remarks to say the listing agent is willing to share some of their commission with the buyer agent? We're not sure yet. I've heard lots of people say, yes, that's going to be okay. But I haven't really seen that in writing. What I have seen is that in the public remarks, we'll be able to call it concessions to the buyer, right? So it'll all be clear. We just need to get our minds around having better conversations. That's all. That's where we start today. So I'm going to skip those, Sean, because I think we covered that.
Yep.
Okay, so stump the coach. Good. I thought we saved a little time. So let's go back to the chat box. Let me move it over. So Sean, do you see anything in there that we should talk about?
I think we addressed a couple questions right in the Q&A box. It's saying last night I had a seller ask me, so now I don't have to pay that commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you addressed a little bit of that, right? As far as what we want to kind of tell and educate the seller on.
Yep, and it'll scripts, so you'll be able to see those, Jamie, when you look at those scripts I wrote, because it talks the seller through all those options. So there's a few things you want to be careful not to say anymore. Now, you still could say it legally now, but it's going to change. So get used to not saying, Mr. Buyer, I'm free to you. Okay, we want to get used that out of our language. We also want to get rid of saying anything like the way it's done around here or the standard way of doing things, because that is not going to be acceptable in the future. And we do want to throw in there every now and then that statement, commission is negotiable by law, and I work for a commission of X. So one thing that is very clear, you always have the right to choose what you will work for, right? You don't have to take what they want to offer you. You still have the right to say, this is what I work for. And in the scripts, you'll see there might be a case with a seller, Jamie, where you say, Mr. Seller, it's so important that we offer some concession here to get this exposure. I'd suggest that a better option than 0 is bumping the price up a bit, just so that we can attract those eyes on us. So that may make sense on some properties, that may make sense in some markets. I used to do that with for sale by owners if I thought it was going to work, right? It wasn't super overpriced, or when they got an offer on the table, they were going to be more reasonable, right? Now, the other one that is in the script, so we may want to throw out there, is if a buyer, you may want to prepare your sellers that there might be some buyers wanting to submit an offer and they are unrepresented. right? Because they don't want to pay an agent. So they think, oh, I'll just do this myself. And Mr. Seller, that potentially could be very dangerous because we don't know anything about them. They haven't been vetted and qualified. They're not working with a professional. There could be lots of things that happen in the transaction and there's no one guiding them. And if that were to happen, if you choose, I could write the offer for them as a customer. I would not be able to legally give them any advice, just prepare the paperwork properly. And to do that and assume that liability, then you would need to pay me an increased fee of X. And we may see some of that, right? But there's not dozens of scenarios. There's going to be a handful. There's going to be buyers asking you, how do I get this paid because I can't afford it? There's going to be buyers asking you to discount, and you have to be ready to show your value. There may be unrepresented buyers coming to you as a listing agent. How are you going to handle that? And then I think actually your conversations with your sellers are not going to change all that much, because in some markets across the country, we're seeing inventory start to get to where it's 3 or 4 months worth of inventory. You know, when rates drop one day in the future, we'll see more listings coming on the market. That means sellers will even have to compete at a higher level. So I think your seller conversations aren't going to be too rocky. It's really going to be more you just getting used to talking to that buyer about the compensation, because for the most part, a lot of us really haven't had to do a lot of that.
Debbie, I think the biggest thing is it's a fluid environment over the next couple of months. We're going to continue to learn and continue to educate each other as well, aren't we?
You know, Doc, I don't have an answer for you yet on how we handle dual agency. In fact, I haven't even heard that addressed yet. And Ron, thank you for what you're saying. I love that. Let's get rid of the word commission and call it our professional fee, which I love a lot. I really love that. Or compensation, right? Instead of commission. So much of this is language and communication. And just last thing really quick, Sean, you know, been on the state of the market webinar last week. I think I'm remembering this correctly. He said last year there were 3.7 million transactions done in the US, which is very low, very low. This year, it's projected to be 4.5. So we're starting to see that improvement. But then Goldman Sachs told us that their data says potentially 30% of the 1.5 million licensed agents could leave the business because they only sell 1 or 2 houses a year and they don't want to deal with this. It's not worth it. They have another job. Think about that. What is that? 30% of
450,000.
450,000 agents that might leave the business. Okay, what if all of them only do a deal a year? But that dumps back into the pool 450,000 deals that now go to people like you who are the true professionals. And I think that's kind of exciting, actually. It's worth a little practice. It's worth it. All right, guys.
Debbie, sure appreciate you. Guys, give Forward Coaching an opportunity to look. That QR code's going to show you an opportunity for them to work together and to partner with them. Debbie, sure appreciate your time today.
It was awesome. See you guys soon. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.